When 17-year-old Ethan Pierce walks down the hallway of his high school, he does so with his head held low and his eyes fixed on the floor. You see, Ethan is painfully shy and has no friends. He's also got more than his fair share of acne scars. But if you ask me, Ethan's most defining feature is his long, flowing hair, which he keeps tied back in a ponytail. Well, at least it appears to be hair. In reality, it's two ancient swords that have been fused into his spine. Now, Ethan has no idea about any of this. And to be honest, if he did, he wouldn't believe it. See, these swords are actually over 200 years old. And they're not just any swords. They're enchanted. They were wielded by a legendary samurai named Miyamoto Musashi, who was said to be undefeated in battle. Unfortunately, Musashi's legacy would eventually be forgotten, and his swords would end up being lost to time. That is, until they were discovered by a group of archaeologists in the early 1900s. At the time, the swords were so damaged that it seemed almost impossible to repair them, so instead they were melted down and turned into a single blade. Little did the archaeologists know that this would fuse the swords together and imbue them with a single consciousness. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let us go back to the present day, where we find 17-year-old Ethan Pierce walking down the hallway of his high school. It's the same old, same old. He's got his head down, trying to avoid making eye contact with anyone. Suddenly, a group of popular kids walks past him, led by the school's resident jock, Jason Woods. Now, Jason and his gang have been tormenting Ethan for weeks, and today is no different. "Hey, Four Eyes," Jason taunts, "what's your blood type? 'Cause you're looking a little pale." Before Ethan can respond, Jason shoves him in the chest, sending him sprawling onto the floor. Just as Jason and his cronies are about to make their escape, a voice rings out. "Release him, Jason." Startled, Jason turns around to see a pair of swords floating in the air. They're ancient, ornate weapons with razor-sharp edges. They're headed straight for him. Without thinking, Jason turns and runs. The swords strike the lockers behind him, sending sparks flying. Then they return to Ethan, who is still lying on the ground. He reaches out a trembling hand and touches one of the swords. A jolt of electricity surges through him, and the sword attaches itself to his spine like a pair of wings. The other sword does the same. "Who? What? How?" Ethan stammers. But before he can do anything else, the bell rings, signaling the start of class. With a sigh, the swords diffuse from Ethan and return to their places on the ground. "I'll explain later," one of the swords says telepathically. "For now, we must hide. If anyone else were to see us, it would be bad news for you." Ethan nods, still in shock. He sheaths the swords and rushes off to class. As the day goes on, Ethan tries to get his mind around what happened. He talks to the swords telepathically and learns that their name is BladeCore. Apparently they chose Ethan because he was kind-hearted and pure of soul. Now that they're bonded with him, they'll protect him for as long as he lives. At first, Ethan is excited by the prospect of having superpowers. But as the day wears on, he starts to feel like he's losing control. BladeCore is sentient and has a will of its own. When Ethan feels fear or pain, they take over his body and fight with a ferocity that scares him. By the end of the day, Ethan is exhausted. He wants to be strong like BladeCore, but he also wants to be in control of his own life. As he lays in bed that night, he makes a decision. He's going to learn everything he can about BladeCore and the world of magic, so that he can one day become like them, strong, powerful, and in control. Little does he know that his journey has just begun. In the morning, he heads to the local library and begins searching for books on the history of samurai and their enchanted swords. He devours everything he can find, learning about the different types of magic and the various ways it can be used. As the weeks go by, he starts to put together the pieces of the puzzle. He learns that BladeCore isn't just any ordinary sword. It's a katana, the most powerful type of samurai sword, and it was forged in the fires of Mount Fuji using a special technique called folding. This process aligned the molecules of the steel in such a way that it could absorb and manipulate magical energy. It also gave the sword a sort of sentience, or soul. Over time, this soul grew stronger and eventually took the form of a spirit. Now, this spirit is what gives BladeCore its power. It allows the sword to heal those who wield it, but it can also make the wielder stronger and more skilled in combat. However, the spirit is also very protective of its host. If BladeCore senses that Ethan is in danger, it will take over his body and fight on his behalf. And as strong as Ethan is becoming, he knows that he's not ready to wield BladeCore yet, needs more training, more experience. But he also knows that he can't wait forever. There's a darkness growing in the world, an evil that threatens to consume everything. And when it does, only the power of the katana will be able to stop it.